All right, Squid Light. We are back with a very long awaited video of our zone offense. Uh, we've been going over zone in practice a lot the past few weeks, and that's because a lot of teams now are deciding to run zone defense against us for whatever reason. I don't know why. It wasn't like this a few years ago, but now it seems like more than 50% of the teams that we play against run a zone defense against us. So, zone offense is likely the most important thing that we are going to teach this year. So, I'm making this video because zone offense is very complicated. And that's because zone defense is very complicated. So, we're going to go through this pretty slowly and look at all of the ways that we can break a zone defense. And there are three main ways to do this. One is getting it around the zone. Two is getting it through the zone, and three is getting it over the zone. That might seem self-explanatory, but these methods aren't exactly easy to just execute whenever you want. There's very specific conditions that we as the offense have to create in order to get these opportunities. And we're going to look at all of those in this video. So starting off, let's look at our starting positions as we always do. And right now I have the Squid Light zone defense set up against us. And we have blue on offense and red on defense. Now, if you've been to practice in the last few weeks, this will look quite familiar, I hope. If you haven't been to practice, uh, probably looks like a bunch of gibberish because this is not at all standard or even close to what a man defense looks like. So we're going to look at kind of the objectives of the zone defense and then how we as the offense can kind of exploit the weaknesses in a zone defense. So we look at our offense setup first. We have 4 cutters across the field horizontally. This is exactly like Hostak. If you don't know Hostak, go watch the Hostak video because you're not going to understand a thing about this if you don't know how a Hostak works. So we have our Hostak cutting pattern. That is exactly the same. The difference between our 3-4 Hostak and our zone offense is that the zone is a 2-4-1 instead of a 3-4. So we have 2 handlers in the backfield like this in our default setup where it's in the middle of the field. Our second handler is going to be a few yards directly behind the handler with the disc. And then we have a cutter occupying the deep space. So that's our offense setup. And let's quickly look at the defense. While defense is not the main objective of this video, it's still important to understand. So we have a 3-man hat here that is mainly focused on forcing swings. As you can see, this is a flat mark. So this particular zone defense looks to take away upfield looks through the middle and allows lateral swings to go off. And then we have 2 rail defenders that take away continuations. Once we get a swing off, we have a sweep that looks to fill holes in the hat as they're rotating and take away any over the top throws through the middle. And then we have a deep defender who is obviously just guarding the deep in this deep cutter here. Great. So we have our setup. And now let's look at some strategies to get the disc past this hat because it doesn't seem very evident initially how we can do this, considering basically every single upfield look at the moment is completely guarded. This look out here is guarded by the rails. All of the middle looks are guarded by the hat and the sweep. And again, the rail takes away this side. So how do we get it past the zone like this? We're going to start by swinging the disc to the other handler. So this handler will pick a side. Can go left or right, doesn't really matter. And we're going to swing it to him. And now we can see that momentarily the hat is out of position. They're not in front of the disc. This guy temporarily has no mark and what you could call a power position. So, as we can see here, there's two downfield cutters directly in front of this handler with the disc. But there's only one defender. So what we can do here is basically the exact same cutting pattern that we've taught you in the host stack. You can call it the diamond shape, or one person goes under and one person goes deep. It's very simple. As you can see here, the hat is sprinting to catch up, but for now we have a couple seconds of free time to look upfield to get a continuation. And the rail cutter here cut under, and the popper cut diagonally deep towards the sideline. And this makes the wing defender have to make a decision. They can either guard this under, like they're doing here, or they can guard the deep. They can't do both. Can't be in two places at once. So we force this guy to make a decision and commit to one of the two. So he takes away the under here, and that leaves this deep throw quite unguarded. This guy is basically in his own zip code. And this is the general principle of how we want to get it around the hat. We get a swing off either to the sideline or back to the middle, and we immediately look for continuation when we have a momentary advantage in numbers against the downfield defenders, because these defenders are taking away one space, or they can only take away one space. So if you have two cutters and you cut to two different spaces, i.e., the under and the deep, one of them inevitably has to be unguarded. So this is our first general principle of zone offense. And then once we get it past the hat, as we've done here, this continuation opened up, we're looking to keep it past the hat with relatively short and easy continuation throws. One of the biggest problems that we've had as a team, at least in the very beginning when we first started learning zone offense, is that we would get it past the hat and then just immediately make a very, very poor throwing decision and end up turning it after doing all that hard work to get it past the hat. The most important thing about zone offense is simply just maintaining possession of the disc. As long as you have the disc on offense, it's impossible to lose the point because you're on offense. So once we get it past the hat, while it is important to keep the momentum going and keep the disc in front of the hat, it is far more important that we don't turn the disc. So our continuation looks should be very, very easy throws. Like this. This guy was the popper on the left side and just did a quick cut to the middle to gain just a few yards. And he's cutting towards the guy with the disc. trying to make these throws as easy as possible. Why? They don't need to be complicated because we have a mismatch in defenders and cutters in this downfield space. So realistically, there should be somebody open every single time. And there should be an easy throw every single time. If you don't see an easy throw, just don't take it because we did all this work to work it up the field like this. We can always just reset and do it again. It's much better than turning it after spending a few minutes just swinging it back and forth and finally getting a look and then just turfing it because we got impatient, we got too excited, and made a poor throwing decision. So, as we continue down the field, it's very important to take those free looks because they'll be there, right? As soon as this guy threw it, he's just open again because there's still no defender here. So there will be easy looks, and I want you to spend your time looking for those rather than trying to just force it because forcing it is how we turn it. Okay, let's reset. And what happens if a continuation off the swing is not there? Let's take a look at an example here. So the hat is moving, and we do the same relative cutting pattern here where the rail is coming under and the popper is going deep. Except this time, the sweep and the deep defender are helping out on this deep cut. So sweep sort of taking away these shorter looks, and the deep is taking away these longer looks, out here. So this guy is no longer open this time. As soon as you see that there's no downfield looks, it's time to swing it. Because once the hat gets set up, those looks will just not be there. We're looking to get it around the hat. So once they set up again, you're probably not going to get around them. It's very difficult unless the hat just sets up super poorly. You'll probably have maybe 3 seconds. I'd give it 3 seconds once you catch the disc off of a swing to get a continuation throw off. And if it's not there, you just need to swing it back. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. There's no downfield looks. The hat is catching up and setting their zone again. So we're just going to swing it straight back. And now, once we swing the disc to the middle, we are looking to get it all the way across the field. Why? Because that is the furthest spot from where the hat is. So the hat's over here. Once we swing it to the middle, we want to continue the swing all the way across the field. So you might hear some of the vets say, finish the swing. This is exactly what we mean. Because this hat doesn't have to run very far to catch back up to this disc. This is maybe 10 yards, 10, 15 yards. That's very, very close. But if we can swing it all the way across to the sideline over here, we're going to have more time to get a downfield look. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Same exact cutting pattern as before. One of the poppers goes, or one of these two on this side of the field goes under. Could be the popper, could be the rail, doesn't really matter. You just have to communicate verbally and quickly who is going to go under. This guy wants to go under, say, I'm going under, I'm going under. As soon as you see this swing go off, because you need time to process that information, and this guy was like, okay, he's going under, I'm going to go deep. So communication between these downfield cutters is absolutely crucial, as it is in host stack, as it is in vert stack, or really any offensive system. You guys have to communicate who's going under, who's going deep. So we figured that out. In this scenario, the popper goes under and the rail goes deep this time. But now the popper is wide open. Why? Because the sweeper came to help with the deep cut from this popper on this side of the field. And then once we swing it quickly back to the other side, he is out of position and he can't help this wing to uh, defend against this splitting attack between the popper and the rail. So now this guy is just wide open, free real estate, easy swing, right? We can also possibly gain a few yards if he comes out here. We can gain a few yards, and now we're even in an even better field position. So that's great. And once we swing it again, we're looking to continue downfield. Now, for most of this video, or basically the entire video up to this point, the deep has not really been doing much of anything. He's kind of just been standing out here and keeping their deep defender busy. But just because you're the deep doesn't mean that you can't come under and help out. Because this popper caught the disc. Now his position in the downfield cutting space is open because he's not there anymore. He caught the swing. So look at this huge, wide open space for a continuation here. There's realistically 3 ways that you could attack this space. One is the handler cuts up line after swinging it. If they cut up line in a manner that they sort of cut off the hat, you can likely get a nice few yards right here from the handler. How do I undo? I don't know. Just moving back. So the handler could cut up line. That's one option. Option 2 is now the rail after going deep could come under. This is a very common cutting pattern that we've seen in host stack and invert stack, right? You go deep to create space and come under. They could do some kind of slashing cut inwards towards the middle of the field where this space is and receive an under continuation. Or the deep, who's already deep, could also come under and receive a continuation in this space. So you have 3 options, but as soon as 2 people make the same cut, neither of them are going to work. So again, somebody has to communicate what they're doing. If this guy wants to go up line, he's saying, me, I'm going up line, something like that. I don't know. Doesn't matter. You have to get that point across as soon as possible. Because if this guy and the handler both cut here, now the rail can cover both of them in this same space, and neither of them are open. Very bad. So we have to communicate who is taking the continuation cut, who is cutting to this open space. It is absolutely vital. Communication in zone is even more important than in zone offense than like any other offensive system, period. So we have to get that point across. Okay, I'm cutting under. This guy says, I'm cutting under. That's me. We have possibly an open look here. It's a little bit dicey with this guy running very, very quickly to cap. But you can see when the hat runs at different speeds to recover and catch up to the disc, this opens up new opportunities for us. And this is how we get it through the hat. So we talked about getting it around the hat by swinging it and then getting a continuation before the hat sets up. Now, let's talk about getting it through the hat. We can get it through the hat when, for example, D1 here is very, very fast, and D2 and D3 are a little bit slower. They might be a little gassed. Their cardio is not quite up to par with D1 here. So D1 is sprinting full speed to cap this continuation throw, but these two are kind of lagging behind a bit. And you can see as they spread out, a ginormous hole opens up in the hat. And pretty much anyone on this team that's going to be playing handler will be able to take advantage of this, because this is plenty of space to squeak a throw through and get a nice big gain like this. It probably won't go as far. This guy will continue to come under, but you get the idea. So the purpose of swinging the disc is really twofold. One is we're trying to get it around the hat, but if we can't get it around the hat, perhaps some holes will open up and we can get it through the hat. So that is the general idea that we're trying to go for here with our zone offense, is we're going for again, those first two methods, right? Around the hat or through the hat. There are times where we can get it over the hat. For example, if this swing goes off and again, we split the wing, it is possible that the deep here will come to help out and prevent this deep throw. Certainly possible, especially if the sweep is kind of in la la land and not doing anything and just standing right here. So if the deep comes to help, now we have this big open space over here. And really the only way we could hit this is with a blade or a hammer, but nonetheless, the space exists, right? And there's not that many people who can throw a crossfield hammer like this, but we do have people that can do that. So this is an option, and this is kind of where the deep will come into play when they're not looking for an under continuation, i.e. when this popper received it over here and then a space opens up under. Because if there's not a space open under like this, the deep can kind of work it laterally, and now the deep has to make a choice, right? We talked about splitting the wing. Now we're splitting the deep. This guy goes deep and our deep goes this way. There's two people in the deep space. He has to choose. And we could potentially get a hammer over here. It'll depend on the wind conditions, obviously, and who's holding the disc, but that is an option. You just need to know your thrower, recognize how windy it is, and this, if it does go off and we catch it, is extremely advantageous, because not only is the hat extremely far behind the disc now, but they're just on the wrong side of the field. So we can get those miraculous looks off sometimes. And it's important to not discount how powerful they are. And that's the main way we're going to be getting it over the hat. In a sweep setup like this, an over the top throw to the middle is going to be pretty uncommon for the most part, because anything that goes over the top is going to float long enough that the sweep could go to either side and relatively easily D it. So that's really only going to work if we do something like this, or like that, and we could float it over the top to this guy. But over the top is really not what we're looking for. We've gotten most of our success with the zone from getting it around and sometimes through. So that should be the order of priority. Get it around first, then think about getting it through, then think about going over. And one last thing I want to talk about is crashes. We had a few questions about crashes during practice, so I figured I'd clear them up. First of all, what is a crash? Uh, we can crash from either the downfield cutting space or in the backfield from the handler. So if we're looking at what I would call just a regular crash, uh, once the disc is at a pretty high stall, like a 7 or an 8 or something like that, and this guy is just off in La La Land and not open or something like that, we can help our handler out by crashing into the hat, like so, with sort of a slashing motion, and just get a quick little dish to reset the stall. That is the main purpose of a crash, is just a stall reset once we're kind of stuck and can't get any open looks. So we crash into the middle of the hat, get a quick little dish, and then realistically, you could just send it straight back. So you get a crash, you can just send it straight back, get the stall reset, and get out of there. And we have another 10 seconds to find an open look. Or if the handler is in the correct position and we're at a decently high stall, this guy can look behind him, and this handler can come in pretty close and again receive a short little dish. But once you take your gather steps and stop, which would probably be somewhere around here, now we're past the flat mark for a very short moment. We get it past the flat mark. And these looks through the middle will very, very briefly open up. So as you can see, if you can get it, low and fast enough, we can get a quick little pass through the middle here to this popper. And that is another way that we can get it through the hat, is by back crashing, as we call it, getting into the cup and past the mark, or even perhaps slightly past the cup, and getting a quick continuation to one of these poppers. And that's another way that we can get it through the cup. But other than that, uh, one last thing to be wary of. Once we progress far enough down the field and we're getting close to the end zone, like 10, 15 yards away, it is very, very likely that the defense is going to switch to a man defense. And that will normally be in a call called fire. So the defense will call fire, fire, fire. And that means that they're switching to a man defense. And that's really only in two scenarios. One is we get it so far past the hat that zone really doesn't even make sense to do at that point. Or, we just work it down the field far enough to the point that we're 10, 15 yards away from the end zone, and zone doesn't really work as effectively when we're that close to the end zone, just for various reasons. Doesn't really matter why, but they will call fire and switch to man, and that is when we need to call end zone, because our zone offense does not work once we get close to the end zone. It's the same thing as our host stack. Host stack doesn't really work when we get close to the end zone because there's no deep space, right? In man host stack, we need to leverage the deep space, and once we get close enough to the end zone, it's just not there. Right? You're going to go out the back of the end zone. So basically, as soon as the defense calls fire, we need to call end zone and transition very, very quickly. That is one of the things that we as a team have been struggling with a lot. It peeves me a lot. Uh, but we're not calling end zone fast enough, and we're not getting into end zone fast enough once we call end zone. So as soon as the defense transitions to man, we need to transition to end zone quickly. We need to call it quickly, and we need to get into it quickly. There has not been enough urgency in doing that. We try to force it into the end zone in our host stack setup. It's just a bad idea. It annoys me every time I see it. I don't want to see it. Just set the end zone. There's a reason why I made 2 end zone videos, and that's because the end zone works. Host stack does not work in the end zone. So please, once the zone defense calls fire, just call end zone, run the end zone system, and we will score. That's enough of my rant about that. I really hope that we can start learning to do that, because that is one of the biggest shortfalls of both our host stack offense and our zone offense, is that we don't transition to end zone quickly enough. But other than that, I think that will do it for this video. I hope this was helpful for people who are kind of struggling to understand the zone offense concepts, or people that just don't come to practice. If you don't come to practice, please show up. These videos are not a replacement for coming to practice and getting the insane sage wisdom of our lovely coaches. So if you don't come to practice regularly, please do. These are not a substitute for practice. And if you have any questions about this, again, leave a comment or send something in the signal. We will answer that, because we all need to be able to do this. Every single team's running zone. We need to know how to run zone. So that is all. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.